Welcome to episode 9 of Leaders of Enchantment podcast. This episode features my first politician here in New Mexico, specifically Meredith Dixon, who represents New Mexico House District 20, which is located here in Albuquerque. She was just reelected to her third term, but you'll notice that this podcast was recorded before this year's recent election. Meredith is not originally from New Mexico, and she found herself moving to our state for a not uncommon reason due to her husband taking a position at Sandia National Laboratories. She got involved in politics not long after arriving in New Mexico, getting involved in fundraising first with Governor Bill Richardson, and eventually joining Senator Tom Udall's campaign. She chose to pursue office for herself in 2020. True to form, I asked a lot of questions about her journey and what being a legislator is like here in New Mexico. Anyhow, I hope you enjoy episode 9 of Leaders of Enchantment podcast with Meredith Dixon.
Okay, Meredith Dixon.
Yes.
Welcome to Leaders of Enchantment podcast.
Thank you.
Meredith, maybe just give me a quick summary of who you are and what you're doing today.
Okay.
And then, of course, we'll get into a bit of your background.
Okay. So I am a state legislator here in New Mexico. I represent House District 20, which is in southeast Albuquerque. So for folks who know the area, it's the Four Hills and Foothills.
Awesome.
And I have been, I'm running for my third term. So I've currently served 4 years.
And they're 2-year terms?
Correct.
Okay. Very good. Very good. You're not from New Mexico.
That's correct.
So tell me where you're from. Where were you born?
So I was born in New York,
Okay.
in Westchester County, in Ossining.
Okay. Help me out. I grew up here in New Mexico, so I don't know my New York geography perfectly well. So is that upstate, close to the city?
About an hour north of the city. I think.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
Fairly urban?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Very urban and very diverse.
Okay.
Socioeconomically.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
Ethnically. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and so
That's actually why I love going to New York City, is you go to an Uzbekistan restaurant.
Yeah. So, well, I was born there, but then when I was 8, we moved to Marietta, Ohio, which is very rural and predominantly white.
Okay.
So it was quite a different.
And how old were you again?
8.
8.
Yeah.
Okay. What did your parents do?
So we moved to Ohio because my father worked for Union Carbide.
Okay.
And so they moved him out to their plant in Sistersville, West Virginia.
Okay. And what's the town in Ohio you went to?
Marietta.
Marietta. And where is that?
So southeast Ohio, and it's at the junction.
Oh, towards West Virginia.
Yep.
Oh.
Right on the river.
Okay.
So the Ohio and the Muskingum River.
Yep.
Meet right there.
So that's rural-ish, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, 14,000 at that time.
Okay.
So,
And so you grew up there, high school?
Yep. Grew up there, elementary school, middle school, high school.
Okay. What were you like as a kiddo?
Well, I liked to be involved in a lot of things. It's interesting because I have been talking to my 15-year-old about high school, and I've had to think back on what I did in high school.
Put yourself back in those shoes?
Yep. And academically, I was solid, not the best, but a good student. But I did a lot of sports, I did a lot of clubs, president of the student body, things like that. So I was doing a ton of things, friends with a ton of people, and just sort of all over the place.
So you were in politics from a young age?
Apparently, yes. Yeah.
What'd you do for sports?
So track, cross country, I rode crew. We had a crew team. Yeah.
On the river? Mm-hmm. On the Ohio?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. I only did that for 1 year. It's a lot of work. So.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. At what point do you remember thinking about what it is you want to do when you grow up?
Probably late elementary school.
Holy cow. I know they say girls develop quicker than boys, but I wasn't thinking that.
Oh, yeah.
Elementary school.
Well, I wanted to be an architect for a long time. So,
In elementary school. You want to be an architect?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My grandfather was an architect, and I think I got in a habit of reading, looking at the magazines of architectural designs and things. So that's what I thought I wanted to be.
Okay.
And then I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and then I don't think I had anything particular in mind.
Okay.
So when I went to college, it was sort of just figure out what I want to do.
Got it. And so did you go straight into college?
I did. I graduated from Marietta High School, and then I went to Chatham College in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Which at the time was all women. So it was an all women's college.
Why did you choose that?
I felt that academically I would do better in an environment that was all female. More competition, less distraction. I'd be able to focus on school.
Okay. And how did that work out?
It had its pluses and minuses.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to expand on that.
So,
because it's a funny thing out here in the West, we don't have, for the most part, we don't have, all one gender schools, but it is common. In the East Coast.
Yeah, I loved it. So we had really small classes. The entire student body at the time, I think, was 500 students. So super small. But what was nice is we were next to Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh, Duquesne University. So all of these other schools.
Was it right in the city? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So one of the other reasons that I was interested in Chatham is because I could take classes at the other universities if they weren't offered at Chatham.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And get credit for those classes.
Yeah. Yes. So
that is real. I mean, to have a school like Carnegie Mellon, just like around the corner, and you could go, wow, and you didn't have to pay for them?
Correct.
How'd that work?
It's just part of my tuition. Yeah.
Really? So the schools figured out some sort of sharing arrangement by which they could pass their students around.
Yes. Yeah. And so what I discovered is that the social atmosphere and being able to take classes at the other universities worked.
It did? Okay. Okay. So all in all, a good experience for you. And you majored in what?
So I majored in global policy studies.
Okay.
And I don't think I graduated knowing exactly what I wanted to do, but my second semester sophomore year, I did an internship and class in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So I spent...
Where at?
So it was through a women's public policy institute. And so moved to D.C. for, the spring semester and through the summer. And I did an internship at the Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay.
And I think what I took away is that I'm not particularly interested, at the time, I wasn't interested in domestic politics. So then I decided to really focus on international politics.
Okay. Okay. And so that guided your decision on a major.
Yes.
Okay. And then according to LinkedIn.
Yes.
You graduated in 1999.
Yes.
And did you take a break? Okay,
Yes.
what'd you do?
So I worked as a bank teller.
You did?
I did. I worked for National City Bank in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Took some time off, did that, and applied to the University of Pittsburgh for their graduate program in international affairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you maintained that international politics kind of interest focus.
Yes.
Even while you were
Yeah.
counting out $100 bills.
Yes. And I think what I really liked about global policy studies or international political economy, right, it's all the same thing, is you're always looking at history, political science, and economics, right? They're intertwined. So if you're making a decision right now in the legislature, you always have to factor in what are the historical motives or attributes.
Yeah.
How does it affect people at the pocketbook?
Yep.
Right? And so all of those things are interconnected.
Okay. And so that's where you were kind of trained to think in
Yeah.
that. What was your goal? Were you thinking of going towards the State Department or?
No.
No.
Nope. I actually, in grad school, I thought I wanted to get a PhD
Okay.
and go into academia.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you didn't?
No, I
Why?
didn't. My husband and I moved to Albuquerque.
So you met your husband in Pittsburgh?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you meet him through school or?
Socially.
Okay, socially. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you graduate in 03, and I assume at that point you're with your husband.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And was that the point at which you guys made a move to New Mexico?
So he was finishing his PhD at Carnegie Mellon in electrical engineering.
Oh, okay.
And so he did that, and then in April of 2004, we moved to Albuquerque. He took a job at Sandia.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yep.
And what was your first impression of Albuquerque when you got it? Well, first of all, when he was considering Sandia, did you come out for his interview?
We did.
Okay. What was your impression?
That it's flat.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know. I felt like it was flat.
Did you not notice there's a big mountain right over there?
Yeah, but I distinctly remember going to UNM and really just seeing concrete. So I think I had gone to the wrong part of UNM to look around.
You didn't go to the duck pond, that's for sure.
I didn't.
Were you just, so he went on base, did his interview, you had the rental car, just
Yep.
cruising around town, checking the place out. Okay. Yeah. And your take-home message is this place is flat? Meredith, that's funny.
Yes.
And you're coming from Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I guess Pittsburgh's hilly.
It's hilly.
I wouldn't call it mountainy.
No.
Okay, so he gets offered the job, accepts it.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm sure a deep conversation between the two of you. What was your, were you double enthusiastic, somewhat reluctant, ambivalent? Where were you on that spectrum of coming here to Albuquerque?
I think I was enthusiastic.
Okay.
I didn't have a particular plan in mind. And, I had been finishing my degree. I had also been working full-time for a nonprofit.
Back in Pittsburgh?
In Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So I think I was looking forward to a little bit of a break and not having, demands on my time or anything like that.
And you didn't have plans to jump into anything?
Correct.
Okay, you were just going to kind of find your feet and see what happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you move here. Did you guys buy right away, or did you
No.
kind of take some time to check the community out?
Yeah, we rented in the Northeast Heights.
Okay.
And it was amazing coming from Pittsburgh where no one had air conditioning. Or, we didn't have dishwashers and laundry in our apartment. So it was
Because you would put your laundry
upgrade.
outside? Yeah. Really?
Yeah, we were down in the basement. Yeah, it would be downstairs.
Well, but you were students, so you also didn't have any money.
True.
So, and then this is your husband's first professional position.
Yes.
Okay, so he's probably making some pretty decent money, PhD at Sandia.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're living the high life. You got your dishwasher and a dryer and
Yep. It was great. It was great. So we had a great apartment, Northeast Heights. He would bike to work.
Okay.
Or just,
which
bike
is
straight
what's so
down
great
Eubank.
about this town.
Right.
Extremely bikeable.
Yes. Flat.
Don't know if I'd agree with that, but okay.
Yeah. And so what I would do is I actually just walked around. Because
that's the best way to get to know cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the real way that I got to know the city is I started volunteering for the John Kerry campaign.
I saw that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were always intrigued with politics, or just infatuated, or what?
So I think I was always intrigued.
Okay.
I don't think, I didn't have any aspirations of running for office myself. And I wouldn't say that I was particularly engaged in politics either in high school or college.
But you said you were on
student class president.
Okay, student class president.
Yeah.
That's somewhat political.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and in high school, I did a shadow day with our congressman, and I went, did a class in D.C., like a week-long trip. But I wasn't super engaged. And then I think when we moved to Albuquerque and I had time on my hands, I decided that I was interested in volunteering to support John Kerry.
Okay. How does one go about doing that? So,
Well, I made a lot of
because you're
phone
new in the
calls.
community.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I actually left a number of messages for the Democratic Party and the John Kerry campaign, and eventually someone got back to me.
Someone finally called
Yeah.
you back.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what'd you do in that first role?
Yeah. So I was a volunteer for a few weeks, and then I actually got hired to be a field organizer.
Okay. So a legit job. Mm-hmm. Okay.
A legit job. I don't think I told Kevin that during the interview.
Kevin,
My husband.
your husband. Yeah.
That they may have told me that it was basically a 12+ hour day, 7 days a week.
Ouch.
Yeah. So he wasn't super excited.
So was this leading up to the election? So
Yes. So
is this
July through November. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
12-hour days,
Yeah.
July through November?
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. So it was intense, but I met a ton of people, got to know the city by, going around we were doing house parties at that point in time. So going out talking to undecided voters and getting people involved in the campaign. And the area of town that I was working was Nob Hill,
Okay.
which was perfect.
Okay.
Lots of Democrats. Lots of
Yeah, I was going to say
active Democrats.
pretty blue, so probably
Yeah.
pretty receptive if you're
Yeah.
wearing a Kerry hat.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And I love telling this. One of my volunteers on the John Kerry campaign was our current Senator Martin Heinrich. When
Really?
he was a city councilor.
And he was quote unquote just a volunteer like yourself?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, he did door knocking. He was great.
Okay. Okay, so obviously we know our history. Kerry did not win that election. What was next for Meredith?
So I got a call from one of the consultants who had been in New Mexico for a few weeks that I had gotten to know, and she asked if I would be interested in interviewing for the state party and
Okay.
working for Governor Richardson.
Okay.
So Richardson at the time was governor, and he was trying to build up the state party more at the local level. So I was essentially a county organizer working in Bernalillo, Valencia, and Sandoval counties.
Okay. And what did that entail?
Lots of community meetings, building events for him when he would go to those parts of town. Yeah.
Okay. And you did that, again, according to LinkedIn, 2.5 years.
So, yes. So the way it worked is I worked for the state party, and because we were really working for Governor Richardson, we then rolled onto his reelection campaign.
For governor. Got it.
Yeah.
Got
so
it.
when he
got
was
it.
running for reelection, and once again, I was working on field. So door knocking, recruiting volunteers, the electioneering stuff. And it just so happened that the summer of 2006, there was an opening for finance director. And the campaign manager at the time, Amanda Cooper, asked me, she said, we'd like for you to be the finance director.
Okay. This is still with Richardson? Okay.
Still with Richardson.
Okay.
Doing the in-state fundraising. I had no idea what was involved. And I remember, basically telling her that I thought she was crazy, that, it wasn't for me, but she knew better.
Okay. Is a finance director akin to a chief financial officer?
No. it's
Okay.
Fundraising.
Fundraising. Okay. So
Yeah.
more on the
So
development
all
side.
fundraising. Yep.
Got it.
Yeah. And I think that what I have come to appreciate about fundraising is it's all about the people.
Yeah.
It's just the connections, it's the relationships, it's the willingness to make phone calls and make asks, get to know people, and represent your candidate.
Got it. How did you get comfortable asking for money?
Well, I've
Because
discovered
that's tough.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But it's a lot easier to ask for money for someone else than it is for yourself. Yeah.
Well, eventually you made that switch.
I did. The other thing, though, is people loved Richardson. So
Okay.
asking for money for him for his reelection, it was not difficult.
Okay.
And then we rolled right into his presidential. And people were excited for him to run.
Yeah.
Really believed in him, wanted him to be president. And so that was also easy. I mean, I had thought it would be hard coming off the re-election, that maybe people would be sick of donating, but they weren't.
Okay.
It was a great time.
Okay. And then it looks like you then switched, so I assume this would have been post Richardson as governor. You then switched over to Tom Udall
Yes.
in his Senate run,
Yes.
doing some similar things, finance directing, field rep, finance
Yeah.
director.
Yeah.
In fact, for quite a bit,
Yes.
if I sum it all up, 5, 6, 7, 8
Yeah.
years
Oh, longer, I think. Right? So I started 10 years, just about.
working for Tom Udall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in 2008, we transitioned over after Richardson withdrew from the presidential, and Tom had gotten in the Senate race. So I moved over to help him. And one of the great things is that at the end of his campaign, I was actually able to stay on as his finance director, basically through his 6-year term.
Okay.
Right? So
And you were always based here in New Mexico?
Yes.
You never went to D.C.?
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And so I actually had my first daughter right after he was elected. So
Okay.
started in 2009 when he was first elected. I was doing part-time campaign and part-time working as a field rep in his Albuquerque office.
And part-time mom.
Yes. Yes.
Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I really liked about working for both Richardson and Senator Udall is they spent a lot of time outside of Albuquerque.
Yep.
A lot of time in every single county. And Tom, he had a mission every year that he had to visit all 33 counties.
Okay.
Every year.
Okay.
And when you're a senator, that's actually kind of hard to do.
Yeah,
Because you don't have a lot of time.
You're in D.C. a lot.
in D.C. a lot. And when you're in New Mexico, it takes a lot of time to drive.
It's a big state.
Yeah. So, but it was, I loved it. And
Okay.
we would go down to southeast New Mexico.
So you were quite literally road tripping
Yes.
with Tom Udall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Both, and Richardson. I mean,
Okay.
it was, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what I loved about it.
What kind of music do they listen to in the car?
I don't know that Tom listened to music.
Well, what did you listen to? I mean, those are long drives. When you're headed down to
Yeah.
Silver City, that's a long drive.
It is. Usually I would go first. Like I'd go
Oh, you'd
advance
drive
as I-
alone. Okay.
I do remember though driving the senator and his wife Jill to Animas, New Mexico,
Okay. Yep.
which is
Far.
way down there.
Yep.
And I don't think we listened to music. I think it was just a little bit of
chit-chatting?
conversation with them, and I was, snacking on. I think I had a thing for frosted mini wheats at the time.
Dry?
Yeah.
Dry frosted mini wheats.
Yeah.
Okay. How about Tom and his wife? What would they snack on the road?
Very healthful food.
Oh,
Apples,
really?
Yes.
Apples. Sliced or whole?
No, whole.
Whole. Okay.
Yeah, he was
What would they do
great.
with the core? Toss it out the window or put it in the garbage?
Garbage.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no detail goes unnoticed here.
No.
I'm sure you really got to know them though, both of them.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I would consider them similar to, an aunt and an uncle, another parental figure.
Okay.
They saw my girls grow up. Yeah, they would check in on me. We went to see them in New Zealand last year.
Okay.
And got to stay with them, and yeah.
Tom Udall and his wife now live in New Zealand?
He's the ambassador. Yes.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay, shows you
Yeah.
how closely I follow that kind of stuff.
Yep.
That's that's a cool ambassadorship.
Yeah, he's working hard. He's doing a lot down there.
Is he?
Always busy.
Is he?
He is, yeah. Even as a senator, always busy,
Yeah.
doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met his brother, Mark Udall. Mark was for a time, was our representative up in Boulder County. So
And actually, Mark and Tom were both elected to Congress the same year.
Okay.
And then they were both elected to the Senate
Right.
the same year.
right. And Mark eventually lost his Senate seat.
Yeah.
Did Tom run again or did he step down?
So he ran again in 2014. So for me, the nice thing about the continuity is I was able to help him fundraise from right after the election in '08 all the way through 2014. So we had a really solid group of donors. I was always in state, able to, build those relationships. And then 2013, 2014 is really when the campaign was getting busy. At that point in time, my mom, who is a retired teacher, she moved out to Albuquerque to help with our girls.
Okay.
So at that time, I think Madeline was 5 and Lizzie was 3.
Okay.
So yeah, we really needed an extra set of hands.
Okay. And when you were working with both Tom and Bill Richardson, was there a point at which you looked at them and saw them and thought to yourself, I want to do that?
No.
Or did that take time?
I loved working for both of them.
Okay.
And at the time, I thought I always wanted to stay in the background.
Okay.
I loved being a staffer. It's the preparation, it's figuring out where to go, who to do stuff with, making sure that they have all of the pertinent information.
Right. All the logistics and
yep.
whatnot.
Yeah. And yeah, I loved listening to them, seeing them operate. I mean, they're very different people.
Yeah. But at no point did you ever think to yourself,
Not at that point.
I see myself doing that.
No.
Not at all. Okay. And so after Richardson, it looks like you then went into state government. Am I understanding that correct?
So worked for Tom. When he decided to retire, so he decided in 2018, he announced he was not going to run for re-election. Well, I guess we actually have to back up. So in 2014, after Tom's reelected, right, good margin, at the same time in New Mexico, the Democrats lost control of the state house.
Okay.
So first time in decades that Democrats were not in control. So the Democratic caucus elected Brian Egolf to be their minority leader.
Okay.
And one of the first things Brian did is he called me and asked if I would help him fundraise for the Democratic caucus. So at that point in time, I was still working with Tom, but I became a consultant.
Okay.
So I was able to work with both of them.
And was that your first exposure to state government?
Really, yes. When I worked for Richardson, I mean, we worked a lot with legislators and they were involved, but this was a whole lot more in depth.
Right. First time being inside the machine, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay.
And having to fundraise at a whole different level.
Different lower level.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Different, right? Because one of the things that I learned is, as a fundraiser, it's about connecting the donor with the issue or the candidate. And so for so many years, I had been working with a federal candidate. And, there are certain donors that only give to federal candidates because those are the races that they care about. And so it was a learning experience for me.
So a whole different cast of characters once you switch from federal to state. No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, there's some crossover for sure.
Right.
But the other thing is that Brian, he was fundraising in Santa Fe. He was a state representative, so he didn't have to fundraise statewide. Okay. So we basically, what we had to do...
Was his district Santa Fe? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when he became minority leader, he had to, sort of expand outside of, his group of donors in order to be able to raise the money that they needed to take back the house.
Got it.
Yeah.
Tell me about... I mean, I've heard you say fundraising a couple dozen times now. And I'll share a story with you, which is I joined Colorado's Governor Jared Polis on a industry outreach effort in India. So I traveled with Governor Polis along with a couple of other industry folks. But one person who joined us, who at the time I think was in Governor Polis's cabinet at the state level, but she had been a U.S. representative. This was Betsy Markey. So this was up in the 4th Congressional District. And for some reason, her and I, we ended up doing a tour of Mumbai together, just her and I. And so I kind of picked her brain a little bit on just what it's like being, a politician. And at least a House representative, and she was in a very, very competitive district, she didn't paint a very pretty picture.
No.
She basically said, all you do is raise money.
Yes.
Money, money, money. Tell me about that.
Yeah. For members of Congress, if you're in a competitive seat,
And it's every 2 years.
Yeah. You are spending.
You get through an election and it's like, let's raise
back
more
to
money.
it. Yep. It is hours every day on the phone dialing for dollars.
Do you enjoy it?
Do I?
Yeah.
I enjoy talking to donors.
Right.
I love talking to donors. I'm always, for me, I still have I feel bad. I don't want to bother this person. I don't want to ask them for money. Yeah.
But you have to do it.
I do. Yeah. And those were all of the things that I would tell candidates.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. They want to be engaged. They want to be involved. They like giving money to good causes and they believe in you. So they want to contribute to you.
Yeah.
So I was always the person telling the candidate how to do the call time.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's how you cut your teeth on fundraising.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a lot of events. I would say for Richardson and Udall, they were so well established that they didn't,
Strong name recognition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was easier for staff to fundraise for them, right? Versus someone in a competitive district where they are really going to have to spend time reaching out to new donors, finding new people. They're going to have to make the hard ask.
I mean, the way Betsy described it, it just sounded exhausting.
Yeah.
It just never ending.
Yeah.
Constantly raising money. And again, it doesn't matter what color you are. Blue, red, purple, doesn't matter.
No.
Money, money, money.
Yeah. And even for Udall, one of the things is we had to have him do call time all 6 years. I mean, it wasn't nearly as much.
Yeah.
But, you have to keep the relationships with donors going, and you do have to fundraise because there are things that you need to do with your campaign over the time period, and you have to pay for that.
So post Tom Udall, and then you start working, with in your case, the House Minority Leader, was it still fundraising, or were you starting to get into more policy type stuff?
Fundraising.
Okay, still fundraising.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say one of the exciting things for me, though, about helping Brian, and I have trouble, I always call him Brian because he and I actually met in 2004 on the Kerry campaign.
Oh, funny.
Yes,
So
yes.
you have lots of origin stories from that campaign.
Yeah. So he and his wife were in the area that I was organizing.
Okay.
And so I met them both
Okay.
at that point in time. But with Brian, because we had to expand the fundraising, the other thing that we needed to do is start traveling around the state.
Yep.
And this became really helpful when he became speaker. Because he was comfortable going to Roswell, Carlsbad, Farmington, Silver City, because it wasn't just fundraising events that we would do, but he would do a jobs tour, right? Meeting with the community.
So employers, meeting with employers, or
employers and meeting, yeah.
Okay.
But learning about the community. And so I think that was really beneficial. And for me, that was a great way to integrate both the policy and the politics.
Yeah.
So I really liked that.
Okay. So when did you sort of a light bulb go off and you made the decision, you know what, I'm going to run as a candidate myself?
Yeah.
When did that epiphany, if you will, happen?
So in 2018, the candidate running in my district was the first Democrat to win House District 20. His name's Abbas Akil.
So historically, it leaned more Republican?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, very much so. He won in 2018, so he was the first Democrat. But
by the way, were you involved at all in
yes,
that?
well, in terms of fundraising,
campaign?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things, I would help Speaker Egolf raise money, but I would also help all of the candidates that were running for re-election or trying to pick up Republican seats. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah. In, I guess, late summer 2019, a boss announced that he was not going to run for re-election.
So he did just one term?
Just one term, yeah.
All that work for one term?
Yeah, it's, if you have a full-time job and you have family, it's pretty difficult to, because you're losing money.
Yeah.
You're not able to
personally losing money. Yeah.
So he decided he wasn't going to run. And I remember talking to our caucus director and sort of saying, why doesn't anyone ask me? I think I could do a good job. Because
was anybody asking you?
No.
Okay.
So I said, I'd be interested.
You'd be who do you say something like that to?
To our caucus director.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And part of it, we spent a lot of time with the caucus trying to recruit good candidates for each district, right? So for my district, for District 20, I felt like I would be a good candidate because I'm married to a Republican.
Oh, you are?
I'm a Democrat. He's a Republican.
I don't know your husband was a Republican.
Yep.
Oh.
So, I know how to talk.
Okay.
And get along with both sides of the aisle. We had young kids.
Yeah.
At the time, they were in elementary school.
Yeah.
So a lot of families in the district with young kids in school. We have a lot of Sandia engineers. So I at least know what's going on with Sandia.
Not surprised. Plus your husband's a Sandia engineer.
Yeah. So I felt like I could do a reasonable job of representing the community because I had a lot of understanding of what their concerns were. And now, so I thought that in September, but the person who had run for the office in 2014 decided to run again.
Democrat or Republican?
A Democrat.
A Democrat.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking primaries here.
So, and we didn't want to do that. And plus, at that time, I don't think my family was ready for me to run.
Okay, and so this would have been in preparation for 2020 run?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So he was going to run, and then something happened, and he decided not to run, and my family still was not ready.
Okay.
So our caucus director found someone else who was interested in running.
Okay.
And so I went ahead and I worked the legislative session. So I had spent 2 sessions working for the speaker as an analyst. So helping caucus members get their bills through. Come out of the session, and the person that we thought was going to run for the seat decided not to.
And what time of the year are we talking?
February. And,
elections in November.
Yes, but to get on the ballot, you have to collect signatures and turn those in usually early to mid-March. So,
oh, dang.
Yeah.
And your guy drops out in February.
Yeah.
Okay, so I assume the ball then goes into the caucus leadership to decide what to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did they do?
So then they asked me.
So then they finally said, gosh, is there anyone else who might be interested?
And so I went home and I talked to my husband, I talked to my mom, because she has a huge role in helping to raise our kids.
And she was local at the time. Is she still local?
Yeah, she had moved. So in 2013, she actually moved to Albuquerque.
Full time. Okay.
And I said to them, I really want to do this. So how do we make it work?
What are those conversations? Tell me how those conversations go down with your Republican husband. How does that?
Yeah. You know what?
Does he start grilling you on the issues?
No. He's been very generous with me. Working for Democrats for so long.
Okay.
We did have a no yard sign, no bumper sticker policy.
Hey, I endorse that. Don't get me started on yard signs.
Yeah. Although now we put yard signs in our yard.
Oh, you do? Oh.
Yeah. I have to put my own.
I guess it's the family business.
Yeah.
But I mean, seriously, what do you guys debate? Hey, do I want my name dragged through the mud? Do I want to? Have rotten tomatoes tossed at me? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest concerns my husband had is I don't have a particularly thick skin. And so I think
You're sensitive.
Yeah.
He
was very concerned about would I be able to, how
weather
would I
the storm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And you know what also happened is COVID happened. So
In March 2020.
yeah.
So how did you get your signatures?
So we were able to get signatures before the
lockdown. Got it.
But then it was crazy because campaigning was all on the phone. Because you couldn't do anything in person.
So your first campaign was entirely virtual.
Yep, entirely virtual. Like endorsement interviews, local Democratic meetings, all on Zoom, calling voters. And I have to say, I really enjoyed calling voters. It was great.
Okay.
I mean, most people, I think they were ready to do something, so they didn't mind having a random person call them.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
They're just sort of getting cabin fever a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank goodness somebody wants to talk to me.
Yeah. The other thing is, because District 20 is a swing district, and there are a lot of Republicans, my main role on the campaign is to call the Republicans and decline to state voters.
And decline.
Yeah, so if you don't want to declare a party in New Mexico, you're a decline to state. So you decline to state,
Who your party affiliation is?
Yes. And that means, and for a long time you couldn't vote in a primary. Now you can register. You have to change your registration, but those are going to be independent people. And
so you did not run on a party affiliation?
No, I did.
Oh,
I
did?
Yeah.
Oh, but you're calling decline. Yeah. Oh, I misunderstood.
Okay.
Sorry. So you're calling people who you have no idea what side of the fence they're on.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
And you particularly enjoyed that.
Yeah, you know why? Because I would say 80 to 90% of the issues we can all agree on. It's just a couple hot button things.
Is that true?
I think so. I think 80%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when you really get down to what people in New Mexico need and how to work for them, yes, I think there's a lot of agreement.
Give me some examples of just universally agreed upon topics.
Support for our law enforcement. I mean, I think you can say that, there are sort of extremes.
I mean, I was going to say, what about the defund the police crowd?
I think that was an extreme portion of the...
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, most people understand that we need to have law enforcement protecting us, Yeah, and so we want to show our support. The more law enforcement we have on the streets, it deters crime.
You're not going to get an argument from me.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So I think, when we talk about issues that voters care about, so in District 20, it's usually crime, housing and homelessness.
By the way, that's New Mexico.
Yes. And I would say education.
Yep.
And then I think a lot of folks in my district are interested in economic diversification. How do we diversify the economy? Given that so many of my constituents are either lab employees or military.
Public sector folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even those people recognize the need for economic diversification.
100%.
Yeah. And that, as an aside, that's something I've kind of concluded, growing up here, gone 20 years, coming back. It's very obvious, this over-reliance on public sector jobs and the need to diversify away from that.
And I will say that when I get to the door of a constituent who is really pro-life, and that is the only issue they vote on, what I do is I, thank them and let them know that my opponent is probably their choice.
Interesting. Okay. Is that pretty typical, where you'll run across a one-issue voter?
There are a good amount of one-issue voters.
Okay, and so on the right, they're easy to identify. So pro-life, pro-gun. I'm not going to say anti-immigration. I'll say pro-border enforcement.
Yes.
What are they on the left? What are the equivalents on the left?
Pro-choice.
Okay.
Women's reproductive health.
Yeah.
Support for, very invested in, well, I don't know, for a single issue, gun control, common
So the
sense.
anti of what I just said.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned having thin skin, which I didn't know about that before.
I'm getting much better.
And well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure repetitions help. Tell me about that. I mean, politics, I don't think I could do it. I just don't think I have the patience for it. I don't, you have to be extremely measured. But politics is just, and especially today, it is so charged. You inevitably are going to come across someone who hates your guts. How do you handle that?
Well, first I would say national politics and the state level is not nearly as antagonistic.
But doesn't it spill over?
It does to some extent, but really on those hot button issues, right? I mean, so most of my legislation has been bipartisan. And like the Office of Entrepreneurship, the House Minority Leader at the time was my co-sponsor.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, you can build relationships and have those friendly relationships and get stuff done. I will say that there were times when I felt sort of personally attacked on the House floor. And that, I may have cried a little bit afterwards. But I also...
By the way, is that inevitable? Will everyone get personally attacked in some form or function at some point in their political career?
Probably. I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, I don't really hold grudges. And, you just keep working with people.
Well, it's business.
Yeah.
That's what I always say.
Yeah.
So you get elected. Completely virtual election.
Yep. And then primarily
And then
virtual
probably
session.
a virtual session.
So I actually got to spend the first session in Santa Fe because the speaker put me on the House Appropriations Committee.
Okay.
And House Appropriations, because of the volume of paper, had to be in the building.
Got it.
So we did our committee hearings in our office, one person in our office, on Zoom, but we were all physically in the building.
Okay. So your other participants were down the hall
Yes.
or around
Yeah.
the corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a little better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it like that first, your first term? Anything that surprised you? I mean, I guess you'd been looking over people's shoulders for quite some time.
The how difficult it was to read bills, to read all of the bills that you were going to be voting on.
Because of the volume or
The
because of the way
volume.
they're written?
The volume. So two things. So when you're on a committee, so I serve on House Appropriations and House Energy, and let's say 2 days before your meeting on House Energy, you know what the agenda is going to be. So you know what the bills are. But you might not get the analysis of the bill until 24 hours before.
Whoa.
So
And how thick are we talking?
some of them are really thick, but some of them are also, maybe just a few pages. But, I mean, even if it's just a few pages and it's going to affect something,
Okay.
you need to have the analysis. You need to know what the different impacts are going to be. So for me, that was really hard, right? How do I have the time to read the legislation, read the analysis, and if it's something I don't know, because remember, I don't have a background in energy, I need time to talk to the people who know, right? So it was really challenging, that first session.
You're essentially given what amounts to a prospectus 24 hours before you're expected to vote on that. So it's like you're back in college cramming for the exam.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound fun.
Not ideal, for sure. Yeah. But for me, for that first session, the fact that nobody was around, I was in my office, I got to read I had more time than I've ever had since
Okay.
to read stuff.
Okay. And you're now on your third?
So I'm completing my second.
You're completing your second.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. How has it evolved over these, I guess, 4
Yes.
years?
So loved my first session, House Appropriations, House Energy. Then we came back in 2023, right? So after the 2022 election, reelected, get back into the session, and the speaker, now it's Javier Martinez, makes some pretty sizable shifts in committee leadership. And so on opening day, I learned that we had a new chairman of appropriations, and I was the new vice chair.
Okay.
That was a huge transition. I had been on appropriations for 2 years, so I had a sense of how the process worked. But we were now, we had to put a budget together and get it out.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the way New Mexico's legislature works is the interim legislative finance committee actually builds a framework that we vote on in December. So we already had something to start with.
Okay.
But it was kind of, drinking out of a fire hose.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah. But it's been great. I mean, I really enjoy sort of learning everything about the state, the different agencies. It's fun.
Okay. So, assuming I'm doing my math correct, you've got essentially 2 decades of experience, and I'm going to say in politics here in New Mexico. Yes, some of it was for federal candidates, some of it was state, and then of course for yourself as a candidate. Give me your top of the tree summary of politics in New Mexico. How it works.
So we have a citizen legislature.
We do, which that's one topic
Yeah.
I want to touch on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are, there are very few states that have short sessions like we do, and where most of your legislators go home and have a full-time
And do
job.
something else. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that makes it disjointed,
Okay.
right? I think it makes it more challenging for the continuity of legislation. And also to learn about issues, because if you do have a full-time job,
You just don't have the time.
Right.
Right. I get it.
I think I've also felt sometimes like New Mexico is risk averse. And I think it goes back to being so dependent on oil and gas revenue, not wanting to make big changes because, we were always afraid that the money was going to get taken back.
Right.
So risk aversion, disjointed, but you know what? You have really great down-to-earth people
Yeah.
in the legislature.
Yeah.
And they really know their districts.
Well, New Mexicans by and large tend to be down-to-earth people, so it makes sense that the people we send to Santa Fe are
Yes.
going to be a reflection of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned the fact that we have a citizen representation. We're the only state that has non-professional, unpaid legislators. Why is that? That is just such a head scratcher to me.
Because we have to change it via constitutional amendment.
Okay, so what? What's the big deal?
Well, in the mid '90s, I think there was an attempt to change it, and it failed.
Okay. Do you know why?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. But now what we've run into is you have to get a constitutional amendment out of both the House and the Senate to get it on the ballot.
Okay.
And we have made progress in getting some components out of the House. 2 years ago, they failed to get out of the Senate.
Okay.
So we need to get them out of both chambers and then onto the ballot, and then we need to make sure voters understand why it's important.
But why would any legislator object to this? I mean, so you mentioned it made it through the House and died in the Senate. What is the argument against it?
Status quo, number
So
one.
just
if you
no
think
change.
that everything's,
Just no change.
right. If you think
Okay.
things are good, then why change it?
I mean, there's always going to be a no change crowd, so that's kind of to be expected.
Yep. I think some lobbyists are opposed to it and can influence legislators, right? Because
Yeah.
at this point in time, remember,
You
we
get
don't
a
have
lot of your information from
we
lobbyists,
do
don't you?
because we don't have
Because
staff.
you don't have staff.
Yeah. Now that is changing. We are getting staff. Some people get to hire staff September 1st. I'll get to hire someone December 1st. So moving forward, that's going to be different. But yeah, legislators have tons of power.
But it baffles me because we're one of 50.
We are.
The other 49 states do it differently. Why would we not? It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think that, there's also the debate of how much should legislators get paid?
Fair
should
enough.
they be
Fair
full-time
enough.
or part-time?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are definitely some legislators who don't want full-time, because if you're an attorney, you may take a pay cut. If if we become a full-time legislature and you have to give up your day job, that could be a pay cut, and maybe you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But
But conversely, I mean, your husband works, brings in money that helps facilitate that. Not everyone has that.
No. We have a number of legislators. One of my very good friends is a single mom with
How the
two
heck
daughters.
does she do it?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
No, I mean literally.
Yeah.
How does she do it?
So fortunately, she's in a very Democratic district.
Okay.
So she needs to get through her primary.
Okay.
So she does that, and then she's working full time, driving her kids. It limits your ability to go to interim committees, go to conferences, learn about issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would argue, though, it limits, by not having a professional legislator, it limits the extent of diversity.
Absolutely.
Because you have to have the means
Yes.
to support yourself.
Yep.
Otherwise, you just simply can't do it.
Yeah.
That's not representative.
Nope. And we have had a number of legislators step down because balancing the finances and family are too difficult.
Totally get it.
Yep.
Totally get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to solve that
No.
here. So why do you do it? So when you were working in, for the minority leader, presumably you were being compensated. Mm-hmm. Now as a legislator, you're not compensated. So what scratches that itch for you?
A couple of things. I love working with people.
Okay.
I like solving problems. And so a lot of it is, what are the problems that we need to fix? And how do we fix them? Mm-hmm. I like learning. Yeah, it's right, coming together, talking to different people, hearing different perspectives, presenting an idea. I enjoy it. I really do. And I also like feeling as though I am making a difference. And in New Mexico, you really can. At the state legislative level,
Yeah.
there's, you can pass a bill and it affects.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The little bit of time that I've spent with you, it is impressive. The kind of some of the things that you can get done. You may or may not have an answer for this, but what does the future hold for Meredith? Do you see yourself kind of holding down the fort in this district? Do you see yourself growing into other positions? Do you see yourself staying in politics?
One of the things that I have noticed and learned about my career trajectory is I don't think I ever had this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do everything possible to get this position. I know exactly what I want to do. It has always been the opportunity that is presented to me and whether I take it. Mm-hmm. And, working for Richardson and starting that way, becoming a finance director, the opportunity to run for office because mm-hmm. my rep stepped down. I am very much a sort of see what the future holds, what comes to me, and also where do I make the most sense? Mm-hmm. Like where can I be the most valuable, mm-hmm. right? With my skills, is it in the legislature? Is it somewhere else? Just sort of have to see.
Just wait and see what opportunities present mm-hmm. themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. Normally I like to ask people to kind of give a little bit of a pitch for their career, mostly with an angle towards younger people. Mm-hmm. You're different in that really anyone at any stage of their life can go into public service, right?
Yeah.
What is your advice for someone who's considering public service, either for a career or let's say you just happen to be a 51-year-old retired post-tech startup guy and you're looking for your next thing? What's your advice for going into public service? Because it can't be the money.
No, definitely not the
It's
money.
not for the money.
So I think the first thing is being involved in the community, right? And finding ways to give back. So before I was elected, I was very involved in a nonprofit called Albuquerque Involved. Mm-hmm. And what we did is we offered families in particular ways to do family volunteering, right? Because, I think I grew up in a house that recognized the importance of giving back to others. Mm-hmm. And helping to build your community. And so that's something that I really wanted to make sure my girls understood.
Okay.
So I think public service, I believe, comes from that desire to help others and make your community a better place to live. It is incredibly rewarding when you pass a bill that is going to change people's lives, or you are able to work with your office and make a phone call to an insurance company and they realize that their policy for, how they're dealing with 5-year-old boys' medication, and they say, oh, you know what? You're right. This is wrong. So we're going to switch it. And you hear from the parent and you're like, they got it sorted out.
Yeah.
Right? It's really, it's very satisfying. It's like a puzzle, right? You've got to figure out the different pieces, put it all together. You got to work with people.
Yeah.
If you like group projects, probably a good position.
Yeah.
If you don't like group projects, you can still work alone.
Yeah.
You can definitely, carry your own legislation and go solo.
Yeah.
But I think you have to work with people.
Yeah.
I think at any level, whether it is being part of a civic organization, which is, one form of public service, or being elected, and if it's, being elected student body president, or city council, there is so much that you can do.
You mentioned earlier getting a bipartisan bill pushed through. How do you work with, appeal to the other side of the aisle that maybe you guys disagree on some hot button topics, but how do you sort of push that aside and come to an agreement? What's the magic there?
So here's an example. Last year I had a bill called the Climate, Energy, and Water Authority. And as soon as I named that bill, I realized, well, you know what, that might not go over so well with some of my colleagues from the other
I just
side.
lost a big chunk of support.
Yeah. And yes, it did. And so one of the things we talked about is, changing it to carbon.
Okay.
Right? Because part of what I needed to do and wanted to do was make sure that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who represented traditional fossil fuel constituencies
Yep.
recognize...
Which is an important constituency.
It is.
Yep.
And it's important to the finances of the state and jobs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But the opportunity that we could create for their communities by using advanced technologies, right? And taking what already exists in their community and the potential for it. And so talking to some of my colleagues from the Permian and the San Juan Basin, when they recognized that, it wasn't quite as scary.
Okay.
But I, did need to change the name.
So branding.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Meredith, that's all I've got for you.
Okay.
Thank you for spending time with me here on Leaders of Enchantment.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we'll call it a podcast.
All right. Excellent.